welcome you to the launch of TransitionRight, which is, I guess, one of the new technologies and products that we're launching into the Australian market, which we're very excited about. And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Mitch Munson, who's our global dairy brand manager, who will speak a little bit about TransitionRight shortly. As a business, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is being an innovator and bringing new products to the marketplace. And in the last few years, we've been fundamental, I think, in bringing the genomic testing, as far as utilising the genomic testing of all of our bulls to give Australian ratings, to give a better understanding of how those bulls work in the Australian market. And as far as companies go, I think we were one of the first to take that on board in a large way. The introduction of fresh sorted semen also was something that was pioneered by ourselves, along with the 4 million sorted semen in the last season as well. And for us, TransitionRight again is the next stage of that innovation. But before we get on to talking about TransitionRight, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge some of the ABS team as well. Those of you who have seen the daughter display, I think you'll agree it's a hell of an undertaking, and I would really like to thank the team that have been involved with that. Particularly Bill and his Northern Victorian teams, and also Nick Boyd, who's come back in to help us do that. People like Jason, Haley, Fletch, Jade, Danny and Max have all been instrumental. There's been a lot of long hours, and I think it's a real credit. So from behalf of the ABS team, thanks very much, and I'd like to put your hands together for those guys and girls. The other people I'd like to acknowledge for the showcases is the owners of the animals who very kindly allow us to use them, and we really do appreciate that. It's nice in the genetics game to be able to demonstrate in real life what we say about our animals, and I guess we want to make sure that they are what they say on the label. So it is really great to have those, and it wouldn't be possible without the support of those owners. So thank you on behalf of the company to them too. I'd like to hand over to Mitch. I think he's big enough to introduce himself, so there you go.
Alright, thanks James. Everybody hear me? Bear with me, I got a little bit of a cold. Nah. You play with that sound at all? I don't know if they're here. Good. Good? Alright. Well, thanks for coming this afternoon, everybody. Obviously, we're very excited. All the food, all the drinks, everything here for everybody to roll out TransitionRight to Australia. So, in the interest of time and everybody for the rest of the evening, let's get right into it. So, how did we get here? Basically, ABS, over listening to our customers over many, many years, has seen some opportunities that we weren't able to fulfill and weren't able to offer our customers. And so, what happened in 2008, we developed a team of geneticists in which their whole goal is to find smarter genetic solutions that we can bring to our customers around the globe. Again, the first thing that we brought to the market, everybody was very used to being able to see the differences in semen fertility amongst conventional bulls. However, we were the first company to bring differences in the sex product. So that's really the foundation of what ABS did with our real-world data platform, and we'll learn a little bit more about that today. So again, sticking with that theme, as we travel around the world and we listen to dairymen and hear concerns or questions about what are things that AI organizations can continue to do for dairymen into the future, one of the things we heard loud and clear was we're already recording a lot of our diseases that are occurring on our dairies around the world, but AIs don't really seem to be doing anything with that. So again, taking that acknowledgement and moving forward, we, again, through our powerful real-world data system, saw this big opportunity, and that's why we're here today. So let's take a little bit of a look at what real-world data is and why that is so powerful for us as an industry. Again, it's really key to understand that this is data coming from our customers, developed in a way that can help our customers even more so. To date, there's over 22 million different cow records from around the world, and as you can see, that's over 1,000 herds. So that continues to grow every single day as more and more people want to continue to provide data and be part of this story. To date, and all the information that's been used to develop TransitionRight, you can see the countries listed there of US, Canada, Mexico, Chile, and the UK as well have played a part in providing data for this system. One of the questions we also get is, what is the size of the dairy that's contributing this information? the average herd size of this data source are over 1,500 cows. And I think the really key point to make there is that it doesn't matter if you milk 50 cows or 10,000 cows. The beauty and the benefit of having that type of sample size is that we can really start to see the differences in the genetics that are in those herds and really start to see the benefit of certain sires from others. One other key point that we want to make is we don't have just ABS bulls in this system. I think it's very key to understand that this is data that we have actually more information on our competitor sires than we do on our own. There's 60% of other studs bulls in this program, and 40% of the bulls are actually ABS. So I just want to make that very clear that we covered all the bases, and we'll continue to talk about that throughout this. The last point on this slide is we're all used to the timing in which data gets rolled out to the dairymen around the world. Let's use the U.S. as an example. There's 3 sire summaries throughout the year. They come in April, August, and December. The beauty of us being able to have our own geneticist staff and being able to come up with our own genetic evaluations is that we can do that monthly. So again, this information gets updated every single month and allows that benefit of added timeliness of data so our customers can continue to see trends much quicker than anybody else in the industry. So to date, as we touched on, our real-world data system has been really key in developing things like bull fertility for both conventional and sorted product. That was the first thing that we were able to launch from ABS. Today we're talking about TransitionRight. That's the second thing to come. It's a very exciting thing, otherwise we wouldn't be throwing this kind of party. But I do want to make one last point in this slide. There's only more to come. And so the next few years are going to be really exciting for us and our customers around the world to be able to see more and more opportunities that ABS saw, took advantage, and made that available to our dairymen moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about the TransitionRight story. We saw a little bit of the background on the data, where it comes from, and how big and robust that source is. Really what we're getting at here is no matter what herd size you are, no matter where you're at in the world, if you're milking cows, you are faced with the challenges of taking a cow from non-lactating into an efficient milk producer that makes you a lot of money throughout her lifetime. Okay? And that's a lot on every single cow. And simply stated, the easier a cow transitions from non-lactating into milking string, the more optimistic we are about her future. Goes without saying, if a cow does not get sick, we know that she's going to milk much more profitably, more efficiently, and save you a lot more money into the future. The transition period, as we call it, it's a very expensive time to be dealing with problems. Coming from a lot of different parts of the world, we're accustomed to seeing dairymen building specific barns, facilities, having dedicated labor and staff to watch just the problem cows that are getting sick and dealing with post-calving problems. And as you can imagine, the treatments that go along with that are a very expensive thing. So that's everything that we've looked at is rolled into what TransitionRight can help save you costs into the future. Not only is it expensive, but it's also very difficult to diagnose. There's also limited time constraints on most dairies that people can develop and set aside every single day to be focused on sick cows, if you will. It also takes a certain level of skill to be able to diagnose, and often a lot of education to be able to understand the differences in the diseases and how to treat them on farm. Lack of resources. How many dairymen have specific vet staff that they can employ just to be able to come through this as best they can? Not many. And the last point is that there is no real practical tool to predict which cows will become sick, which ones will come through scot-free. So it's a big opportunity to look at what the genetics can do. Looking a little bit more at the background, how does this come about? Every time a cow calves in, she goes through that state of negative energy balance. She's using a lot of her fat reserves on her body, running all that through her liver, and it's a very susceptible time for that cow to come down with any sort of disease. We know that the first priority of every single cow is to start making milk for first her calf, and then the rest of the herd, and make that dairyman a lot of profit. She will use all those reserves as best she can. She goes through this negative energy balance, and if we can get her to come through that without a lot of problems, the future is that much brighter for that cow. There's many different disorders and diseases that we're all used to seeing and dealing with on dairies. Things like lameness, metritis, retained placentas, milk fever, difficult birthing, displaced abomazos, mastitis, and ketosis are all very common post-calving problems through the transition period. The three that we're going to talk about today are metritis, mastitis, and ketosis as part of TransitionRight. The key with this slide is that they're all very interrelated. It's very hard to figure out which diseases cause which, and often it's very different on every part of the world that you're in, all the different environmental impacts that every dairy is going through. As again, we'll talk about those highlighted in red today. So how are our dairies impacted by mastitis, metritis, and ketosis? We all know what mastitis is, and it's a quick way to lose a lot of money the more cows that you're dealing with on farms. The most cited common cost in the U.S. economics is $200 for every case of mastitis on a dairy. It's pretty substantial. The next disease is metritis, or an inflammation of the uterine tract. Those are more of the gruesome type of diseases that dairymen have to deal with, I would say, in terms of both economics. As you can see, there's a $350 cost for every single case of metritis, as well as what that does to the cow and repro efficiency on into the future. And the last one is ketosis. Probably the least understood, but basically excess of ketone bodies flowing throughout the cow, which affects her milk production in a negative sense, as well as also setting her up for more challenges through reproductive efficiency for that lactation. And the most common cited cost is just under $300 for a case of ketosis. So you can see the big opportunity for every single dairyman. If one cow got all three of these diseases in her first lactation, her future isn't so bright. And so I think it's just understanding what that looks like on your dairy, understanding challenges that can exist, but also looking at it in a different sense of what you can do to address some of these issues in a different way. Dairymen are always have the cows at their first and foremost priority. We understand that. They do everything they can in preventive care, whether it's vaccinations or nutrition, supplements, what have you, to get those cows prepared to come in and become a profitable cow on into her lactation. But then the only other way that dairymen deal with this is the reaction side of it. What happens when the cows actually do get sick? And that's as we've just talked through the economics and what kind of a financial hit every dairyman takes for every single case of those diseases. But we're going to talk about a new opportunity for dairymen today. It's not uncommon for dairy farmers to lose up to 10% of their herd every single year due to problems that arise in the transition period. Basically, if cows are going to get sick on a dairy, the 30 days post-calving is the most common time where that happens. And it doesn't matter what your focus as a dairyman is. We've mentioned cow-focused operation and profit. That really speaks to what your drive and desire is as a dairyman. When we talk about cow-focused people, they tend to be so ingrained in what the cow's thinking, every cow's named, they're very passionate about every single cow. And when a cow gets sick, or heaven forbid dies, it's a rough day on that farm, every single time that happens. Operation. These are people that really focus on making a lot of synergies throughout their dairy and allowing them to run as a very smooth operating program and into the future, allowing them to grow in the business as well. And profit focus, this is pretty straightforward. These are people that really, they're businessmen first and foremost. They sell milk, and they do it as efficiently as possible. So again, the key point here is that no matter what your priority is as a dairyman, this appeals to everybody. Again, a little bit deeper on the impact side of things. 3 out of every 4 diseases that occur in dairy cows happen in the transition period. It's pretty staggering, but I think often we need to take that into context and understand if a cow's going to get sick, it's probably right after calving. So if we can start to do things today to prepare cows to come through that scot-free, we're going to be that much better off in the future. The most important group is typically your highest milking producing cows, and as much as 50% of all the highest producing cows have to deal with some sort of transition cow problem. Again, very staggering. There's been quite a bit of research over the last few years on these diseases, but little to no focus was placed on the role that genetics actually plays in transition cow health until now. So we've got an opportunity. And we posed the question, what if we could break this cycle and we could make a herd of cows that are predisposed to fight disease and just avoid a lot of those problems? And we've got the answer through prevention through genetics. And I want everybody to take a little little gander at how that whole matrix has evolved from prevention and reaction and actually introducing genetics into the whole picture of what we can do to these herds. And making cows that are efficient, trouble-free, allowing dairymen to do their other priorities on the dairy every single day rather than deal with sick cows. Let's look at the economics. It's a pretty key slide. Hope everybody can see it. But this is actual real-world data. This is how it's all derived. There's an economic benefit to our TransitionRight ranking. The very best bulls, or those sires that have daughters that come through a transition period with little problems at all, there's actually a $100 benefit per every single lactation for that dairyman to be using those sires. On the flip side, on the bottom side, the worst sires through a transition period, there's actually a $100 cost of using those genetics because those bulls tend to have daughters that are that much more problematic through the transition period. By definition, most bulls in the population are average. So there's 40% of the bulls in this database that are, by definition, zero benefit. The ones that don't hurt you, but they don't help you either. And so if we're really looking to make an impact, obviously dairymen will be looking to the 4- and 5-star sires to really be focusing on the genetic improvement of transition cow health. When we look at what we expect to make in terms of impact on dairies, it's often easiest to think about if I used a bunch of semen from one bull and compared it to if I used a bunch of semen from a different bull. So in this case, as packaged through TransitionRight, and we look at the 3 diseases of mastitis, metritis, and ketosis. If we had 100 daughters calve in of a bull that was a 5-star sire for TransitionRight, and compared that to if we had those same 100 daughters sired by a 1-star TransitionRight sire, we would expect to see 7 fewer cases of mastitis, 6 fewer cases of metritis, and 4 fewer cases of ketosis. That is as packaged just by using a 5-star in place of a 1-star sire for 100 daughters calving in. So people talk about heritabilities and other ways to understand the impact of how this looks and feels for every single dairy. We feel like the best way to really wrap our heads around this is when you start talking cow numbers, and if I use this sire instead of that sire, this is the best way we can show understanding the differences just by using a different type of genetics in those dairies. So let's take a look at some key bulls. I think we're all familiar with a few names, and I figured it'd be best to walk through what some of those bulls look and feel like in Australia. So Silver, Monterey, Joe Super, MVP, Battle Cry, and Dreamweaver have all been tremendous sales bulls for us over the last couple of years. And as you can see, there's a little bit of diversity up there in terms of what those bulls bring to the TransitionRight ranking. Silver and Monterey have both probably been our highest sales bulls around the world. You see one bull does slightly better for TransitionRight than the other. Silver is a 3-star, Monterey is a 4-star. Joe Super is an extreme production bull that people looking for protein have really flocked to around the world, and it's a testament to what he can do through no problems coming through the transition period. Bulls like MVP and Battle Cry and Dreamweaver also rank extremely well. Proven bulls. So obviously when we've got daughter information, we start to feel that much better about what everything looks and feels right. So when we highlight bulls like Armitage, Gonzo being an Australian bred bull, you can see he ranks extremely well as a 5-star TransitionRight sire. Contour is a relatively new release bull from Larcrest for us, and he also ranks extremely well. A bull like Dorsey, goes without saying, foundation of many pedigrees around the world, a bull that actually does not hurt you through the transition period. I personally was a little surprised at that. I would have assumed with his type of production and overall package that he might have been slightly lower than a 3-star, but again, encouraging story to see there. And then bulls like Doberman and a relatively new release in Hearst, also nice ranking TransitionRight sires. So, we're coming to the end of this presentation, but in the meanwhile, if you want to focus on doing what you've always been doing, that's really your other alternative. We've got a neat opportunity with genetic packages that can actually allow you to make a herd of cows predisposed to fight disease, not get sick, and in the meantime you can continue to do what you've always been doing and manage around that. But I think what we're offering is a really big opportunity on into the future to really start changing that discussion and understand what genetic really can do advancing your health of your herd. So with that, that's my presentation, so I appreciate everybody's time. Thanks.
very much, Mitch. Are there any questions of Mitch while he's still here? Just one point I'd like to make is that we talk about transition period. One of the bits of information I'd like to share is that when you look at Dairy Australia data, it would actually suggest that 75% of the animal health cost that's discretionary occurs in that transition period in Australia. So while Mitch has concentrated on a lot of the global data, it's very important to realise that the same issues actually impact upon our herd here. So the advantages that we see with the TransitionRight rating is the same in Australia as it is in every other market. So thank you very much, Mitch.